Well, I was born in Bangalore, a small town, and I call it a small town because when I was growing up, I would cycle 7 kilometers from home to school and probably see a few cars. My parents were born in Bangalore, and they've probably never lived, actually they've never lived outside Bangalore. They never did have any plans to live outside Bangalore. They grew up there, and they've lived there all their life. They worked there all their life. However, if you see the last 20 odd years, the change around us is increasingly frantic, unpredictable, and complex. Traditionally, India was largely an immobile population. If you were born in a certain place, you probably lived there all your life. In the last 20 odd years, India has become an increasingly mobile population. With that have come complex challenges. Social structures have broken down, way of living has changed, quality of life has changed. Today we have an aging population that probably lives in places where the children don't live, and we haven't built social structures to support that. There's increased incidence of crime in cities like Bangalore. The way we're removing poverty from cities like Bangalore is by actually just removing the poor. Our children are going to grow in this unpredictable, complex, frantic pace of change. If you look at technology around, it took us about 38 years for our 50 million people to start listening to radio. It took only about 4 years for 50 million people to adapt to the internet. Jobs that existed in 2004 no longer exist today. The top 10 most prominent jobs in the world today didn't exist way back in 2004. We have no predictability around what kind of jobs are going to be available in the next 15 to 20 years. In this kind of fast-paced change, makes it extremely challenging and difficult for children and young people growing up today to adapt. Add to that is adversity. When we are talking about children from vulnerable backgrounds, they also come from spaces of adversity. And what is adversity? Adversity could be abandonment, neglect, lack of love and care, in extreme cases abuse, violence. What happens when there is adversity? Development stops. Development gets delayed. We all have sensitive periods when we pick up certain skills. Have you ever seen a toddler in a cradle jump up and start running? They first learn to crawl, stand up, walk, run. When that happens, we know that's normal development. When children miss out on a normal development process, there are developmental delays and there's damage. There's research that says that due to neglect and abuse, the damage from neglect and abuse can sometimes be lifelong. 9 out of 10 children who have experienced neglect will have mental health challenges in their adulthood. It becomes extremely critical and urgent when you're talking about young people from vulnerable backgrounds, young people who come from urban slum communities, young people who come from single families, young people who are in shelter homes, for them to actually prepare for this fast changing, unpredictable world when their basic struggle is overcoming adversity. If you walk into a shelter home, you'll see a bunch of children come up to you, run up to you, hug you, touch you, ask you who you are, where you're going to take them, and you feel great about yourself. These children are so loving and caring and giving. Can you imagine your child at home a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old doing that. A child in our home would probably hide behind me, peek out, look at a stranger, and wonder if they can trust a stranger. And then when they get that feeling of trust from us, they probably then go up and say hello. Because they have gone through a normal development process of growth, of understanding emotions, of building healthy relationships. But a child in a shelter home, due to adversity, due to abandonment, probably not learned that. Which is why as they grow up, they start facing challenges of building healthy relationships with people, get into relationships of abuse and violence. There was a research that Ed Tronick did, was a professor of psychology at University of Massachusetts. It was called the still face. The research was about watching responses of an infant as parents responded to this infant. So as the child, as a 4-month-old infant, was cooing and gurgling and giving responses through their expressions and body language, and the parents were responding to that, the child was picking up the emotions of a healthy relationship. And in the experiment, when the parents stopped doing that, when the parents started giving a blank expression, the child could not understand it. The child fought for it. And when done it over a long period of time, the child experiences not just delays in brain development, but actual brain structures changing. And as they were growing up, not having the ability to have control over their emotions. There are over 140 million children in India today growing up in adversity. The dividend that we talk about, the workforce dividend that we talk about, constitutes these 140 million children. And they're increasingly becoming a liability. Because at the core of it, we're not addressing the issue of adversity. And the double whammy is that they're also growing up in an increasingly fast-paced, unpredictable, complex world. How will they respond to this? How will they leapfrog into this future when they are so unprepared for life itself? A young man that we work with came from a history of violence at home. The first time he entered a sports program that we offered him, he picked up a hockey stick and beat up another kid. A young woman that we were working with, 11 years old, at the age of 17, decided to run away from home. We could never trace her. A young 11-year-old boy dropped out of school because he got beaten up at school. And after that, for 4 years in a row, when we attempted to reintegrate him into the schooling environment, he kept running away. Ultimately taking crime, he stole a bike, got into an accident and lost his life. This is the urgency and criticality of what we are living with. A whole population that's unprepared for life. The question is, can young people, especially from vulnerable backgrounds, leapfrog into this new world? The good news is there is hope. Research has proven that young people who come from spaces of adversity can change. Their brain development can be brought back into normal structures. Normal childhood development can happen. There is new research to say that the second big burst of brain development happens in the adolescent years, between the age of 13 to 19. So there is hope. How? By nurturing and fostering young people's ability to creatively respond through life skills. We're talking about nurturing them, fostering their abilities to creatively respond. These are young people who are going to enter into a world, they're going to compete with people like you and me. And they don't have a chance, we know that. But what could possibly leapfrog them into that future is skills. Skills around creativity, problem solving, empathy, in the way they respond to the world. Cities like Bangalore are going to run out of fresh drinking water in about 5 years. We're going to have severe water shortage in about 20 years. When that happens, do we want our young people to fight with each other or to creatively respond with empathy to find a solution that works for everyone? I'm hoping it's the latter. How can we make that happen? The biggest resource we have today is you and me. The biggest resource we have today is a population of teachers and educators in our country. 1.5 million teachers in the current government schooling system, an additional 1.5 to 2 million teachers in the private schooling system. In the last 4 years, we've been working on an experiment to unlock creativity and empathy in teachers and educators across the country. In the initial phase, we worked with about 1,000 teachers, coming from a belief that every individual has ingrained empathy and finding a way to unlock it by creating powerful transformative experiences. We've come across teachers who are extremely sensitive, caring, loving, responding with empathy, and that's been sucked out due to external challenges in the system. But when we managed to actually unlock that, we've had teachers who have come back and said, the young people that I work with now in schools, they love me. I've stopped carrying a stick with me. We have had schools who have said we've stopped using corporal punishment because now we've found creative, fun, engaging ways to keep children within the learning environment. We've had teachers who have said, I'm beginning to understand children's behavior when they're violent or restless or quiet in a classroom. What are we doing? We're basically unlocking teachers' potential to create deeper impact in the lives of the young people through building core competencies around listening, not just from the head, but also from the heart, validation, which is authentic, building abilities for personal connections to happen with young people, creating safe learning spaces, which are not just physical, but emotional safe learning spaces, where children can feel trusted, where children can authentically share. This is the movement that's begun now. We're hoping to take it to about 20,000 teachers in the next decade, and through that impact about 2 million, which is still very small. I end with a quote from Nelson Mandela, who says, we're not born with hate. We're not born to hate someone because of their religion, of their background. We are taught to hate someone. If we can be taught to hate someone, we can also be taught to love someone. And that comes more naturally to human beings. And we are working towards unleashing that power of empathy and love in the world so that young people who come from vulnerable backgrounds will have a fair chance in our world. Thank you.